Hello biology students, this is Mrs. S here. Today we are talking about protein synthesis. So remember that last time when we were in class we were talking about DNA replication. So we had a cell that had a strand of DNA in it and it went through the replication process, and by the end of it we had two identical cells that had identical DNA as the original cell. So remember also we said that at the end, if these two cells replicate over and over and over again, we're going to get a ton of cells full of the same identical DNA. So today we're trying to figure out now, how does all of those cells and all of that DNA code for us? We're all unique. We all have our own specific DNA. So how does our cells holding our DNA get us to the point of having individuals that are all incredibly unique? So that's what protein synthesis is. So pretty much, I'm going to tell you the answer. It's by proteins, this whole lesson. And when we get to class, we're going to talk about proteins and the importance of them and how crazy these things are. So we had a brief introduction in our macromolecules unit, but protein synthesis, we've got to make these proteins to get us to be into a functional place as humans, or any kind of animal for that matter. So protein synthesis is simply the building of proteins. The building of proteins. So synthesis literally means to build. So we're just building proteins. That's what this process is. So how do we build proteins? It all comes from our DNA. Our DNA codes for proteins. Before we get into this whole coding thing, it's crazy. I want to remind you of how important proteins are and the crazy things that they do. So 6 things real quick that they do. They repair and maintain. Repair and maintain. And an example of that is our hair and skin and muscles and organs. All of that is made from proteins. Okay, all of that is made from proteins. When we are young little babies, they have to have a lot higher protein intake because they are growing and building at a much quicker pace than like your average human would, because that they are still trying to grow and become a developed human being. So proteins are really, really vital in repairing and maintaining just our bodies in general. So the second thing that proteins do is we use protein for energy. Energy. Okay? So our body converts proteins into energy. All right. The third thing that our body uses for proteins are hormones. So hormones are things that our body uses to really function correctly. For example, we have to regulate our sugar intake, and that is what the protein insulin does. So hormones are going to regulate kind of just our body functions in general. And you can go way more into that, but you will have to take Intro to Health or things like that, health science, if you want to go more into all those crazy things. But that's just an overview of what proteins can do for hormones. Another big one that we should be familiar with is enzymes. Enzymes speed up chemical reactions. Okay. Super, super duper important in our bodies. All over the place, enzymes are used. Okay. Fifth one is transportation. And oftentimes, it's the enzymes that are moving things around, not always, but proteins, which are enzymes are proteins, they will be used for transporting things around the body. So specifically molecules that are needed elsewhere. So moving molecules around the body. Okay? And the last one is antibodies. And this guy we're going to get more into later, but antibodies are things that are going to prevent illness or infections or diseases. If something is not located in the body, if there's something that's not familiar, it's foreign to the body, antibodies will fight against any diseases, illnesses, infections, things like that. So I'm going to write prevent illness and infections. / infections. Okay? So we have to have proteins. They do all of these crazy things, and if you put all of these crazy things together, we now have a functional human being. So we gotta have proteins, okay? And how do we make proteins? Our DNA codes for those proteins. And so down here at the bottom of our page, we have an example of what this coding looks like. So this first strand, this is just a regular strand of DNA, okay, double helix, so it's got two sides. It's going to go through two phases of how to interpret the codes. So you've got all these crazy letters in here that we've talked about before. You got thymine, guanine, cytosine, and adenine. So all of these letters, they are in a specific row, a specific location. So it's going to go through two stages. The first stage is transcription. And what's going to happen, you're going to describe your DNA strand into an RNA strand, which is just a single strand. Something to keep in mind here is that you might note there is no T's, there's no thymine in this RNA strand. There is only U's, and that's uracil, U-R-A-C-I-L. And so uracil is in place of thymine. So you're going to have uracil instead of thymine in this case. So that's the only difference really, but you still just go, you have your letters and you're going to transcribe into an RNA molecule. Then the second step is translation. So you take this RNA strand and you are going to translate it into proteins. And it's translated, you read the code down the line just like you would read any other kind of sentence, but you're going to read it in threes, and we call these threes codons. So every third letter, so if you capture 3 letters, that is a codon. And that codon is going to translate into a protein. So all of these down here are proteins. So again, you have your DNA strand, and you are transcribing it into an RNA strand, just like finding your base pairs as we did before, but this time we have no thymine, we only have uracil. We're going to read that RNA strand in thirds, in 3 letters at a time, which are called codons, and those codons translate into proteins. And then these proteins are going to go off and do whatever job that they were designed to do. So, all right, so that's pretty much it. It's a lot, but at the same time, it's really straightforward. We're going to practice this once you get to class, so have these notes done, and we will see you there.